Welcome everyone to the First Peoples Cultural Council's information session on the Cultural Practices Grant. We're very glad that you could join us today. Thank you for being here. My name is Elsie Jo, and I'm part of the heritage team here at First Peoples Cultural Council. I'll be coordinating this Cultural Practices grant cycle, and I'm here to support you throughout the process. My contact information will be shared later in the presentation and is also available on our website. Please don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions about the grant or the application process. Just a quick reminder, this session is being recorded so that it can be shared with anyone who wasn't able to attend today. Today's session will begin with a short overview of the Cultural Practices Grant, about 15 minutes, followed by a 45-minute Q&A. If we don't get to your question today, or if you'd prefer to connect with me one-on-one, feel free to reach out to me after the session. In this session, we'll go over the key details of the Cultural Practices Grant, including what the grant is about, the types of activities it supports, who can apply, how to show community support, what costs are eligible, what's needed when creating an application, tips to help with your submission, the grant timeline, and overall how to apply. The Cultural Practices Grant is a funding opportunity that supports BC First Nations and First Nations-led organizations in planning, carrying out, and documenting community-based cultural practices and events. These projects may affirm and celebrate cultural identities, foster a sense of belonging within First Nations communities, or celebrate the roles, relationships, and responsibilities within a community. Applicants can request between $10,000 and $25,000 to support their projects. This grant was made possible through funding from the Ministry of Indigenous Relations and Reconciliation. It's part of a broader initiative focused on preventing gender-based violence and supporting survivors. We recognize that Indigenous women, children, and gender-diverse people are disproportionately impacted by this type of violence. At the same time, we know there is deep strength, pride, and resilience in cultural practices, roles, and relationships. With that in mind, the Cultural Practices Grant was developed to support the revitalization, recognition, and strengthening of cultural practices, encourage intergenerational knowledge sharing, affirm identities, foster belonging, and celebrate roles and relationships within communities, promote collective safety and well-being in BC First Nations, and use cultural practices as a pathway to prevent and heal from gender-based violence. This grant supports a wide range of cultural activities, both those that have been carried across generations and those that communities are working to reawaken. Here are some examples of eligible activities and events. Celebrations to honor children, youth, and others who hold important roles within the community. Events or gatherings focused on modeling safe, healthy relationships and preparing children and youth for the future. Seasonal and celestial events or activities. Reawakening cultural places and their associated traditions. Documenting oral histories, protocols, laws, and stories related to cultural practices and events. Creating teaching tools about cultural practices for use in First Nations youth programs, communities, and schools. If you're considering an activity that isn't listed here, feel free to reach out to us at cpg@fpcc.ca. We're happy to discuss how your project might fit within the grant's focus areas. Please note, this grant is not intended to support sacred, private, family, clan, or individual ceremonies. Also, FPCC understands that cultural practices are diverse and often not meant to be shared publicly. Because of this, reporting on this grant will not require detailed descriptions of specific activities or practices. Community support. Support and guidance from elders and cultural advisors with recognized roles in the community is essential. Their leadership helps ensure that projects are carried out in a way that is safe, respectful, and culturally appropriate. As part of the application, you'll be asked to show that the people leading your project activities hold community-recognized roles that align with the work being proposed. The Cultural Practices Grant is open to a range of BC First Nations-led organizations and groups. Eligible applicants include BC First Nations bands or tribal councils, not-for-profit societies registered in BC, in good standing and governed by BC First Nations individuals, with at least 65% of directors identifying as BC First Nations. BC First Nations-led museums and cultural spaces, with at least 65% of directors identifying as BC First Nations. Urban and off-reserve BC First Nations organizations, with at least 65% of directors identifying as BC First Nations. Or BC First Nations schools or adult education centres operating on BC First Nations lands. Please note that FPCC is unable to fund K-12 classroom activities or post-secondary accredited courses or tuition. For societies and organizations that are not First Nations governments, we may ask for documentation such as legal name, list of the organization's current board of directors and governance structure, certificate of good standing, certificate of registration, a copy of the organization's bylaws and constitution, and proof of insurance. If your organization is in the process of becoming a registered society or not-for-profit, FPCC may still consider your application. Please reach out to us to discuss your situation. Project costs must be essential to the work and directly tied to the project. All costs will be reviewed to ensure they are reasonable and accurately estimated. Eligible project costs may include honoraria, which are specific to the project. Honoraria half-day rates range from $150 to $250, and full-day rates range from $300 to $500. Please note, any rates above these amounts must be covered by the applicant organization. Eligible project costs would also include salaries and wages, which are specific to the project, contractors and consultants, who may be hired when specialized skills are needed to complete the project. Please note that contractor costs must not exceed 30% of the total funding requested, and that funding recipients must demonstrate that they have made the best efforts to hire an Indigenous contractor. If a non-Indigenous contractor was selected, a clear justification must be provided. Indigenous contractors and consultants will be prioritized. Also, a written quote is required for any contractor costs above $1,000. These quotes must be submitted with the grant application. You may also include equipment and rental purchases. Examples may include items such as computers, recording equipment, or other tools that support project work. Please note that up to 20% of the budget may be allocated for general projects, and up to 80% of the projects which are focused on research or documentation. You may also include administration costs. Please note that this is capped at 15% of the requested funding. Software and apps. These must be necessary to achieve the project's objectives. Meeting and event space rentals. These are eligible if essential to the project. Materials and supplies. This may include safety gear, recording tools, and meeting supplies. You could also include hospitality costs, as long as they are reasonable and necessary, or travel and transportation, also if they are reasonable or necessary. Training and mentoring. Projects funded through the Cultural Practices Grant must include a training or mentorship component. This is a key part of the grant's goals to revitalize and strengthen cultural practices and support the sharing of knowledge between generations. It's important that teachers and mentors are recognized by the community as the right people to guide others in the project activities, and that those receiving training or mentorship also have the community support to take part in the learning. Other considerations and tips for a strong application. Here are a few things that can help you succeed when developing your project proposal. Please note, only completed applications submitted using FPCC's grant portal will be reviewed. So it's important that you pay close attention to the following suggestions. They'll help you ensure that all required information is included in your application and that the independent peer review committee can evaluate your proposal more effectively. Applications must include the following: a clear project description, a balanced project budget with detailed descriptions for each category, a thorough work plan with dates or key activities, a project timeline that fits within the grant funding term, letters of support from your First Nations or organization, and from the community. All letters must be signed and dated. Please note that letters of support differ slightly depending on whether you're applying as a First Nations band or as a society or nonprofit. Please read the funding guide carefully to see what's required. Applications must also include quotes from contractors for work above $1,000. Finally, applicants must include proof of additional confirmed funding, if applicable. Examples of this proof include funding agreements and letters from donors or sponsors. Let's take a look at the key dates for this grant program. Application deadline is December 12th, 2025. Be sure to submit your completed application through FPCC's grant portal by this date. Next is the funding notification. Successful applicants should be notified beginning in late February 2026. Next is the project start date. Project activities may begin on or after February 27th, 2026. Next, intern reports are due October 5th, 2026. And then the final report is due April 2nd, 2027. All project activities must be completed by this final report due date. How to apply. Applications are now open on FPCC's grant portal, which you can access at fpcc.smartsimple.ca. To apply, you'll need to create an account, but don't worry, the portal will guide you through this quick and easy process. If you need support while preparing your application, please reach out to us at cpg@fpcc.ca. We recommend contacting us at least 2 weeks before the deadline to ensure we can assist you in time. Okay, so we've made it to the end of the overview presentation. I would like to thank everyone who was able to join to watch and listen. I hope it was helpful. On screen, you can see the web address for the FPCC website and the email address for the Cultural Practices Grant. Again, feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions.